Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me, as head of the board of the European Wergeland Center, to give you a warm welcome to this 15 years anniversary seminar. The topic of today's panel couldn't be more topical. Education as a bulwark for democracy, the case of Ukraine. Since 2013, the Wergeland Center has worked closely with schools in Ukraine in partnership with the Ministry of Education and Science, and we, Norway and the Wergeland Center, aim strongly to continue to support and learn from the democratic educational reforms in Ukraine. Through the last 10 years, a strong cooperation has developed. Over 120 teachers have participated in our Schools for Democracy program in Ukraine. Hundreds of schools have become arenas where democracy is learned and practiced every day. We have organized seminars, workshops, discussions, even study visits for 2 ministers of education in Ukraine to Oslo, for exchange of experiences, since both countries were undergoing a comprehensive education reform. Since then, an important dialogue with Norway was born, supporting Ukrainian schools to strengthen democratic education, building up a will to democracy, one could say. And I am proud that Ukraine and the Wergeland Center have persisted in our common projects after the war on Ukraine by the Russian Federation. Every day, thousands of teachers do their utmost to lift the war generation. As Christina Schushak, whom I will introduce in a few seconds, said in 2022, quote, "Teachers and other educators constitute a second front nowadays. They shelter displaced people, coordinate volunteer work, conduct lessons for students in Ukraine and abroad, and at the same time, they feel the need to learn, to communicate with their peers and inspire professionality." In December 2022, one of the 34 engaged youth from our Ukraine, Poland, and Norway youth exchange said, "You can change almost anything when you have a well-educated and passionate people around you." And this, I hope, will inspire our seminar today. And I hope that this day will bring us even further in building confidence and trust in how we could live together in a peaceful world. And now, I will give the word to the head program coordinator, Ukraine, Schools for Democracy, Supporting Educational Reforms in Ukraine program, Christina Schushak. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to present to you today what we've achieved in Ukraine in, as it was mentioned, 10 years of European Wergeland Center presence. I am a part of European Wergeland Center, but today I wanted to start with my personal story, so more of a story of a person coming from Ukraine. And these days we mark 10th anniversary of Maidan protests. On 21st of November, in Ukraine, we celebrate the Day of Dignity. This is the day when student protests started on Maidan Square, when the students came out to protest pro-Russian and anti-European policies of then President Yanukovych and government led by Mykola Azarov. And November seems to be quite a tumultuous month in Ukraine because 10 years before that, 2004, nearly in the same days, the first colorful revolution in Ukraine started, Orange Revolution, when the students and society came out to the Maidan Square to protest rigged presidential elections. At that moment, I was a student studying in Poland, and when the protest started, me and my colleagues, we gathered, we hired a bus, and we went to Kyiv to join the protests. 10 years later, I was no longer a student, and actually, when the students started their campaign, I, as a more grown-up person, already thought that probably this is futile. Maybe I should prepare for a longer work. I was not sure that their efforts would amount to anything. I was kind of skeptic. But then, when on November the 30th, the demonstration, the protest was violently dispersed, something changed in me. At that moment, I thought that this is not a thing that could happen in my country. With my background in international politics and political science, I know all the different theories and all the different labels that were attached to Ukraine, the liberal democracy, the non-complete democracy, the forming democracy, and so on. But when I think me and my colleagues, when the Ukrainian society saw the brutal dispersal of 400 students by 2,000 armed special force specially trained people, that was something that was out of our picture of the world at the moment. So for us, this was a blatant violation of human rights, and this happened early in the morning on Saturday. And on Sunday in the morning, I was already in Kyiv. Me and my friends, we just went on a train. Not sure what awaits us in Kyiv. And I was surprised to see hundreds and thousands of people gathered, not orchestrated. Now it's called a March of a Million. There are debates if there were really a million of people at the day on Maidan Square and in Kyiv. But it was something that was very symbolic for me, that people believed that these things should not happen, that this kind of violations of human rights and human dignity should not happen. And without coordination, I started meeting people I knew from different walks of life, from different spheres, just meeting in Kyiv, in the streets, in the Maidan Square. That was a very important moment for me. Little did we know how much more of horrible stories and stories that should have never happened but did were to follow those events. But for me, the protest on Maidan, which I frequented from time to time, I wasn't there all the time, but I was coming and going, were the symbol that, okay, in Ukrainian society, we do hold certain values dear. We are able to stand up and protest when certain things are going wrong. And for me, it was a symbol that our society is changing, despite all the labels about not a perfect democracy, not a growing up democracy or whatever. Our society is changing, and in February 2014, after several bloody and really frightening days of Maidan shootings, when we as society breathed out because we believed that we won, the President Yanukovych stepped down, we believed in future elections and so on. Crimea was annexed at the same days, more or less, and the Russian-Ukrainian war started, then still believed to be maybe not a war, but by many people around the world, maybe some kind of local conflict, maybe some kind of civil even war to a certain extent, which was always very painful for me to hear. But at the same time, most of the society still find the power in themselves to celebrate that we overcame some kind of darkness, we overcame some fate that seemed to be predestined already, that we would fall in the autocracy, we would struggle to convince and to conduct pro-European policies and so on. So for most of the society, still this was a bittersweet victory, but still a victory. And international organization, international society started to help Ukraine on its way to build stronger democracy, to revive pro-European strivings. And around this time, European Wergeland Center started to be more active in Ukraine. And in 2014 was the first time when I met with people from European Wergeland Center, and since then I started cooperating with them, and I believe myself to be a proud member of this warm and very professional family. So Norway started supporting Ukrainian society, including education, many other spheres, but also including education. And in 2015, a bigger program was launched. The program, which was also meant to support a major educational reform, because after Maidan revolution, politicians and society believed that we have to embark on really serious changes if we want to somehow make up for the bloodshed and for the sacrifices people were making at that during the protests. And decentralization reform, education reform, reform of medical sphere, reform of police, many reforms followed. And actually, it's one of the fond stories from Anna Perona, how the program was drafted over breakfast with the then Minister of Education, Lila Hrenevich, and how actually European Wergeland Center reacted to the very needs of the ministry of that time, and how many things that were to come were shaped in this friendly and close cooperation. It's actually, these are two pictures of two ministers of education, Anna Novosad and Lila Hrenevich, before they became ministers. But these are still pictures from events by Wergeland Center. So I think that European Wergeland Center has a very good feeling or very good nose as to people who will be important in the future. So, I think that really big strength of the Ukrainian program of the European Wergeland Center in Ukraine is exactly that it is conducted in very close cooperation with Ministry of Education and Science, with many other public institutions, some of them which were established in the run of this reform, and with many experts. I think that we have a small cult following. Cult is sometimes a bad word, but still a fan base among Ukrainian education experts. Now with the approaches and the general feeling that European Wergeland Center creates in its activities. And the tone it sets. So European Wergeland Center has been present in Ukraine since 2013. The funding is beyond 5 million euros. These are just numbers of the biggest programs, but there were smaller ones to begin with. So it makes the Norwegian support of educational reform and reform of school education one of the biggest. So Norway is actually one of the biggest actors in that field, and there was actually a lot. A lot of things were achieved. We started with actually field work, with working on the ground level was working with schools and capacity building of schools, capacity building of teachers, creating a network of democratic schools, because actually the program started a little bit ahead of the reform, and then when the concept of reform was announced, it was a good thing because we had a really good experience of groundwork. We really understood how schools work, what are the challenges that school principals, teachers face, what is the atmosphere in schools, what do students think, what do parents think. So basically this was a very good start, this groundwork, and it helped us to build this program when our experience was fed into policies. And then everything that was done by the ministry on the level of policies, we could then provide mechanisms, provide tools, provide ways of making this easier for teachers and principals to implement, to understand what the big words and policies mean, and so on. So I really like this circle of the way the European Vergland Center acts, and of course to bring the policies to the ground level. One needs to work with tools, but okay, first I maybe describe a little bit what we were doing, what we are still doing in Ukraine. So we started as a support for secondary school reform, but soon it was clear that if we are talking about development of democratic culture, democratic competences, you have to start earlier than school. And now we are proud to have a really strong partner who does a lot of work on kindergarten level and shows how actually to Ukrainian kindergarten teachers and principals how democratic culture can be built on this level working with little kids. We work a lot on the policy level, but we also try to help the ministry to communicate the reform and to make it more understandable, to provide good practices, to support publications in media, especially targeted to educational professionals. We also sometime before the COVID started, we understood that, okay, Ukraine is a huge country. We've developed, for some countries, 400 schools could be a big number. For Ukraine, it's a good number. But if we wanted to reach almost all schools, we had to go online. So we started to prepare for going online sometime before COVID, and it gave us an advantage when the COVID started. We already had trainers prepared, materials prepared, at least we had this readiness inside of us to start the online learning. And here I remember that we had these courses and trainings with teachers from Lillehammer who really taught us a lot how it could be best done. And so again, we could go online also due to the experience of Norway and learning from Norway. A lot, I mentioned that a lot of things were done in policy. We were, at some point, we were one of the main supporters and providing both expert and technical assistance in writing up national curriculum. And here, I would also mention that Vergland Center has this, well, it doesn't only translate Norwegian experience, but also European experience and Council of Europe approaches and experiences. So this was also very important in this process that we could tap into resources that go beyond only Norwegian experience. And also I think that the way our national curriculum were designed, they were quite good because of the European Vergland expertise and these broader perspectives, and then, okay, policies are good, but if they're not implemented, if there are no tools, if there are no work on the ground, they can be pretty useless. So we tried and try to work in parallel, so to provide hands-on materials, and I think that here also the role of European Vergland Center is crucial, because European Vergland Center was established at some point as this body which translates policies on the grounds, first for Council of Europe, but then it also worked very well, in our case, this way of working. So, and I would also stress another important part of the important feature of Ukrainian program is that although we were relying much on European experience, Norwegian experience, but there was also this understanding that everything that we do has to be localized. That, for instance, we had a big program, Finnish program, that supported educational reform in Ukraine, but they were very open about it, that we translate Finnish example to you, and then you make of it what you want, right? So it's up to you what to take from it, what not. And it turned out to be quite a difficult task for a regular teacher, to listen about experience and ways of working of some other country, and then to translate it everything on the go into your own practice. So that's a bit overwhelming. So I think that one of the strengths of our program was exactly that we started working with experts, but then we started developing resources not for teachers, but with teachers. And I think that this is a very, very important differentiating feature of the Norwegian assistance and the way European Vergland Center works in Ukraine. Of course, many new topics, new perspectives, new approaches were brought. We worked with schools piloting the new curricula, the visits, study visits were already mentioned. Here you see the ministers, the same ladies, but in the roles of ministers now. But I have a very vivid memory of the first study visit that we had. It was then a newly established state service for quality assurance in education. And I remember that actually, the Norwegian experience of quality assurance was, I think, groundbreaking for them, because when they heard about quality assurance as a tool that helps you to work with problems, to overcome problems, to help those who struggle, instead of being a tool of punishment or finding who is guilty of I don't know, some things that are not working at school. I think for them that was quite eye-opening, because before that they went on study tours to Czech Republic, to Baltic states, where the system was a little bit in the middle. So I'm proud to say that many of the tools that they saw here, they reworked later, and also, for instance, in our quality assurance system, the voice of students is also very important. So there are questionnaires for students, there are interviews with students. So this is definitely the influence of the study visit and the experience they gained here. So another fantastic and fruitful visit was this year for kindergartens, but I'll have to run because I think need to finish my presentation now. So the model of democratic school was something that was, and whole school approach is a kind of a brainchild of European Vergland Center and Council of Europe. In our program we also produced the model of democratic kindergarten. And I think that this model is something that, first of all, was helping to build democratic culture in schools, and also now it's still very important for maintaining and building democratic culture in schools in the times of war and after war. Digital citizenship, online pedagogy, formative assessments, all these things were brought to Ukrainian teachers within European Vergland Center's initiatives. And like our idea was that all of these things that we've made possible and were making possible would be available for each and every school in Ukraine, from the one with a couple of thousand students to the one with under 100 students. Unfortunately, 24th of February 2022 really changed many things in Ukraine and in the world, and it is said that around 10% of schools now are either damaged or completely destroyed. Many schools are in the occupied territory, so they exist as this virtual bodies where teachers and principals still try to keep up some kind of community, but everyone is in different places, and some still stay in the occupied territories, which is really dangerous for them. But it turns out that in the times of war, the instruments, the tools that we've developed still were quite viable and efficient. So the online courses, the blended courses, turned out to be kind of safe space to which teachers started to turn in the first months of war. So in March, the outbreak of war was 24th of February, but in March, schools already started coming back to their school life, so to say. Very different school life than before that, but they started to function as education institution with many other functions on top of them too. And it turned out that learning and attending courses, professional development was some kind of haven for many teachers and for many school principals. So we will probably talk about the results of research a little bit later, but what is important, I think, that, and what is European Vergland Center doing, is also that we are not just imagining the needs, or we are not just imagining our target groups, but throughout the program we've conducted several different researches to understand what are the needs and how we can satisfy them better, what tools are needed, and so on. And these two researches were conducted already in the times of war, and they showed that actually this model of democratic school, on one hand, helped or school democracy helped schools to survive these difficult times, to remain community, to remain an institution, a community, even, as I mentioned before, maybe a virtual one. And also, while before the war, some topics like, I don't know, we were focusing more, for instance, on institutional development, on participation, on equity, and human rights and dignity. But in the times of war, this model is still very valid. But some other things like peaceful coexistence, conflict resolution, again, human rights and dignity, but from a different perspective, they come afore. So basically, I would say that the program was preparing schools to a certain extent to be resilient in these moments of extreme crisis of war. And on the other hand, we believe that working with the same values, with the same fundamentals of democratic schools is something that could and would be helpful to heal the schools and society when the war is over. This is also what our trainers say, what people on the ground say, that working with diversity, but a different type of diversity, working with conflict resolution, peaceful communication, nonviolent communication, and so on. These topics will remain vital for quite some time after the war is over. I do believe that actually teachers and professional educationals, they do hope that they will be supported in this period that I had when I was younger and more naive. I thought that, okay, at some point you can teach teachers and principals and they will be professional enough and they will be free to navigate the oceans on their own. But what I see now is that actually this need of communication, mentorship, dialogue is always needed for them. So, and now, in these difficult times, probably more than ever. So this is where I end my presentation, and I hope that some other issues we can discuss later in the discussion.
Dear Christina, please do not leave the stage. You can just take a seat here because we will jump right into the panel discussion. And it's a pleasure for me today to invite our distinguished guests who will participate in the panel discussion. We will continue speaking about education as a bulwark of democracy. And please give a warm welcome to Ola Elvestuen, Member of Parliament from the Liberal Party and the member of the Standing Committee on Energy and the Environment. Please. Anywhere, yes. And Jørund Øssen, Director of the Department for the Nonsense Support Program of Ukraine at NORAD, Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. Welcome. And last but not least, Anna Perona Fjelstad, Executive Director of the European Wergeland Center. Yes, and my name is Natalia Yeremeyeva. I work as an advisor at the European Wergeland Center, the project manager for the Ukraine program, and I take the last seat. But thank you so much for being here with us today. And Christina, thank you once again for bringing your personal story and incorporating it so well into the European Wergeland Center's journey of bringing education for democracy and human rights in Ukraine. Well, it was impressive for me, even though I've been aware of all these things, but I think, going back in time and connecting it to the current situation of Russia's war on Ukraine is very important. So thank you again for this. But there are many things we can discuss today concerning education in Ukraine and the role education has played in current war. And from one personal story, I would like to turn into another personal story, and I go directly to you, Jørund, because, well, NORAD has had an official visit to Ukraine just not so long ago. But apparently, well, you've also got some impressions about the country, about different aspects of life, and of course about the education, I hope so. What struck you most in this journey? What was like the biggest impression from the trip when it comes to education?
No, it's right that we were there, but I must also say that the Ukraine expertise is much higher in this room than it is with me, but I was very lucky to be able to visit, and I'm glad I did so. And we visited a school that was occupied 2 years ago, where soldiers, took over that school for more than a month. And, it makes a really strong impression because a school building, and you mentioned it as well, up to 10% is the numbers now. And a school building is just not another building. It represents sort of the hope, the future, the next generation, and to see how sort of schools, literature, learning materials, students, to see how all that is sort of played out within this war, and systematically attacked. It makes quite a strong impression. And I'm also thinking that this comes, after you mentioned sort of online learning. Of course, there's a lot of things you can do, but this also comes after COVID. So we're talking about quite a long period for thousands of children, and they don't have that time. It's so that made a very, very strong impression on me. It also made a strong impression how the community has sort of, and their efforts to fix that school again, and to make that school sort of a live place for the community, and the importance, of course, to have shelters there so that the children can go there and be safe there. So schools and the whole education sector is, in my eye, I used to work with education myself as well, so maybe my heart is a bit there as well. But I think it's central to this whole situation, and also then should be central to the response. So no, that made a very, very strong impression.
Thank you for sharing, Jørgen. Christina, I turn back to you again, and well, you've introduced some numbers because you were standing at the origins of the program, well, from day one, more or less, European Wergeland Center's program in Ukraine. But now you've introduced some numbers, but we also report on some other things, and these are thousands, literally, of teachers. Over 113,000 teachers who have taken our massive online courses since they were launched, and just over 50,000 of them since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war on Ukraine. And, well, you also mentioned this blended or facilitated courses. Over 5,000 teachers, both at school and preschool level, have taken those courses. Only during this last 1.5 years, since the 24th of February 2022. What does it tell you? How does it make you feel? I mean, it looks like an enormous engagement at wartime.
Yes, I agree. I wouldn't pretend that it was not surprised for us as well. When in March we started to think what can we do and what should we do and how should we respond to what is going on, there was, of course, a big feeling among our team that we should kind of turn to humanitarian response, maybe. And I actually am really grateful to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who said that, okay, you can be as flexible as you want, but you have to achieve the goals of the program. You still have to work with the education and the goals that you set in the program, because they turned out to be wiser than I was at the time. I think everyone was a little bit disoriented, and then because when we started to work on what we know how to do, and we kind of have expertise and we have the access to target group, turned out that the target group was waiting for that, right? So you mentioned the numbers, and these numbers means that actually one of 4 teachers in Ukraine was enrolled in our courses. I mean, this is, if we speak about mathematics or arithmetics, the truth is slightly different because, as I said, we already have a fund base, so I'm sure that there are some teachers who went through a couple of our courses, we know it for sure, but still, that's more or less the number that 1/4 of Ukrainian teachers could have been could have enrolled into our courses. And I mentioned some of the reasons. First of all, that this feeling of community, because the way we, I mean, massive online courses is one thing, but the facilitated courses that we provide, these were the courses where people could communicate, could exchange their experiences, and they are bringing people from different regions of Ukraine as well. And from what we know, this is what is valued for teachers that come. So actually, amidst the war, amidst the chaos, amidst of everything, there was this platform where they could meet and at least still talk about how to be better teacher or best teacher for their students. What happened later in 2022, these massive blackouts, that was a big issue for online learning, right? This was something that we did not expect. This year, we are still lucky, I hope I don't know what will happen next, but we are lucky that we don't have these shellings and blackouts, and so this year it seems like we will have twice as many graduates from our courses than last year. So on one hand, teachers really wanted, as I said, to be better teachers for their students, at least to make up in that respect. Also, it was really interesting, but during COVID, many teachers learned online pedagogics. But at the beginning of war, our courses on online pedagogics were super popular. So at that point, some teachers who probably were kind of, COVID, we will survive, we will, you know, so think of something. They finally kind of understood that, well, for the foreseeable future, there's no other way. So I think that also, you know, this professional dignity in a way, these values kind of kicked in at that moment. And so one thing is community and something that they were used to, but the other thing is like this dignity, values, and desire to help children, at least in that way, as being better teachers. I think so were the factors that influenced that the most. And also the big surprise for us was kindergarten teachers. They were initially in the program, the courses had to be like really blended, so we had to have face-to-face learning. Because of war and COVID, we had to take out the face-to-face learning, but it allowed us for more flexibility, so we actually could accommodate the bigger numbers that we counted for. But the kindergarten teachers also were a big surprise for me, because they were really seeking advice what to do with children in this situation, what can they do. So I guess these were the reasons why we had so many teachers and still have in our courses.
Well, there are many factors, obviously, that play in, and it's quite often we hear, and at least the European Vargaland Center advocates that the reconstruction of Ukraine, the rebuilding of Ukraine will start from its schools. And it's, well, we have been speaking about rebuilding for quite some time, and well, I will turn to you, Ulla, now, because obviously the Liberal Party you represent has joined this white coalition or political agreement on Nansen program, this multi-year support program for Ukraine, which was announced in February this year. And then also your party widely advocated for military help to Ukraine as an important thing. Well, but even before the Nansen program has become a reality, we also spoke a lot on Norway becoming kind of a flagship on rebuilding Ukraine, taking the leading role. What do you think about the role of education in this process? Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, it is very central. My personal experience with Ukrainian schools, I've only visited them as an election observer. That's the only part, a few years ago. But the way I see it, first of all, Nansen program is good because it gives stability for some years, but it's not enough. Because now, in the situation that Ukraine is in now, even though the difficulties on the front line, we need to increase that support. You see now that Belgium has increased, Netherlands has increased, Germany is increasing their support, and you have the insecurity in the US. We have to increase that support. And the way it is now, that unfortunately has to be for the military support, because that is what's needed, and that's everyone has to do. But on the other hand, then comes the Nansen program. It is a long term, and as I listen here too, we are not starting from scratch. So, and it's two parts on this. I think one part I see is also a crucial part on resisting Putin's Russia, because we see the goal that he has is not only to change the regime in Ukraine. No, it's about erasing Ukrainian culture, and it's about suppressing and driving Ukrainian culture underground. And that's what's happening now in the east and on Crimea. So we are seeing that part. So to have a education system that looks on democracy and human rights and is building up around that, I see that as also a part of the resistance and showing the difference and what stakes, the incredible high stakes that is being thought about. So that is one part, and the other part, I think also that with Ukraine having the membership officially, a membership application for the EU, then we also have to start that integration. And of course, and when you have that status, of course, the EU systems, they start to work. And Norway has to be part of that. So, of course, we should support the Wergeland Center, but also look at our grants, because we are now negotiating the Norway grants, so the EEA grants that we are giving to countries. That I don't know how those negotiations are being held, but they should definitely also include Ukraine, Moldova, and others, so that we can start that more systematic approach also on that level. And what is good about those Norway and EA grants is they are based on cooperation. So if you have this, it's not the numbers and the support and the numbers we have to put in has to be enormous, because to first to win the war, and then to rebuild after the war and get that inclusion into the EU and the EEA era that we are also part of. So it has to be really, really large. But it's good that we have already started, and we have to put the systems right so that you also get the quality of the support that we put in. But really the first one is, and I think it's the most crucial, is to increase that support that we have. Nansen program is important, but it's not enough, and it has to be done now.
Thank you, Ola. Very important points and a very good transition to more international perspective. And that's why I would like to turn to you, Anna, now. The European Wergeland Center is working has projects at the moment in over 25 countries, and has been working in more, of course. And what do you yourself see at the systemic level? So is there any degree of awareness about the role of education? How do different societies respond? What is the understanding in this front?
Yes, I think that we can say that there is a bigger awareness about the role of education to make or break democracies, as we once said. So education has a huge role. Just to illustrate this, the Council of Europe decided to invite to a Ministers of Education conference a year ago. That was the fourth in its history, so it doesn't happen that often. And they decided to do it in Strasbourg, and many, myself included, says, who is going to go to Strasbourg? It takes one day each way, people are really busy, they will not come. This year, so in September, we had 21 ministers of education and 14 deputy ministers present there. I was lucky, I was also invited. I could listen to their reflections. What I could feel is this sense of urgency. There is this emergency. Education is absolutely crucial if we are going to transfer the values, the values we have built in our societies to the next generation, and see what is happening. We had just elections in the Netherlands last night. Scary stuff. So we really need to invest in education. And when I was listening to the ministers, of course, the Ukrainian minister was talking about, he spoke about the war, but there were the Minister of Education of France. He was talking about the huge challenges the French system has with bullying, cyberbullying, kids committing suicide by being bullied so much, this polarization, discrimination. So it's actually a lot of problems. And some others were talking about the role of education in times of conflict and emergencies, like climate change emergencies, floods and things. So the issue of building resilience is very, very central to many ministries. Now, the question is this awareness of the need to invest in education, transforming into really investing in education. It's just putting on the political agenda as a priority, but what about making it a reality on the ground? Because we need motivated teachers with good salaries. We need teachers that are really have the capacity to deal with a number of issues, from artificial intelligence to disinformation, these kind of things that they were not prepared to when they went to university. So we need them, we need the materials that allows them to really bring these issues into the classrooms. We need policies that also facilitate this. So I think this week was the UNESCO conference. Our Minister of Education was there as well. And the person in charge of education, Stefani Giannini, said something really very, gave advice to policymakers around the world. And he says, you need to have committed policymakers that not only talk about education as part of their political capital, but they put it also in their budgets. And I think this is a very important message to all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Anna. Well, obviously, we've seen that education was in the budget of Norway's support to Ukraine before the beginning of Russia's full-scale war. And Christina, I turn back to you now. You mentioned already our emergency response. Well, apparently we can speak for hours if we knew at that time that if the Ukrainian teachers are going to be ready to be resilient and show all of this. But in any case, it was important for us at the Wergeland Center and a part of the Schools for Democracy program to start gathering more information about Ukraine. You mentioned those research projects. Mm-hmm. And we started gathering those witness stories. That was the first project, research project we had in spring 2022. And then it turned out like a big thing, showing really the changing role of schools in Ukraine, something we probably could not expect at that time, but the interviews were showing many, many interesting results. And it clearly demonstrated the importance of the competences for democratic culture for building resilience both among teachers and students, something we were investing to earlier. So tell us more about that, because I think those results are extremely important and we should speak more about them.
Yes, so this was actually also a very important, but also in a way, the results of this research fed into our understanding that we were doing the right thing and that we should continue doing, working with education and democratic education further, because for instance, we interviewed school principals, teachers, and school children, and also had focus groups with school children. And it turned out that in the moment of crisis, democratic values became the most important things they turned to. It was, for me, again, frankly, it was a surprise. It was a very nice surprise, but still a surprise, because when we were working with the RFCDC model of democratic competences, when we were talking about value-based education, quite often it seemed to be that for teachers, values, yes, we understand the values are important, but skills, yes, this is where everything lies, and this is something we understand better. And suddenly, when the war started, the values became very tangible. So, and values, democratic values, helped many grown-ups to make sense of what was happening. So for them, they really started seeing what was happening in Ukraine as their fight for democracy and for human rights. So in a way, these democratic values were helping them and becoming very important part of this understanding in general what democratic education is. And also school children somehow maybe it's all teachers do that, but when we worked with teachers, they used to complain that children are not active enough, they don't treat citizenship seriously, they are not responsible citizens, not responsible enough. And suddenly the war also showed how important citizenship and Ukraine and belonging was for these kids. Also empathy was one of the attitudes which became very important at the times of war. But as we mentioned briefly earlier, schools managed to often we say that it would be great if schools became a center of communities. And again, when the war started, schools really became centers of communities. These were the centers where volunteers were gathering, where help was gathered, where internally displaced people were housed, fed, and where actually, in case of occupation or threat of occupation, also the community felt that the school is this hub in a way. So very similar to what you were describing, right? So the research showed actually also that schools which took building of democratic school seriously, they were better equipped for this crisis. So schools which really invested into horizontal leadership, into building good communication with parents, into making school children an equal partner, equal actor, they fared better, or at least they had this feeling of self-efficacy, or at least they had this feeling of, okay, we still can do something even in these tumultuous times. So for me, it was I was happy to see that actually what we were thinking would help was helping the schools and the communities and teachers and principals. Because we had interviews with schools which were taking part in our program, and with some schools and teachers who were active teachers and school principals, but who were not taking active part in our program, were not members of our network. And you could see that, yes, there were differences between schools who were building this democratic culture and whole school, who were really investing in this whole school approach, and those who weren't. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Well, at least you have tried to emphasize, or at least it was clear for me, that knowledge is power. And this is like very, very clear statement.
Culture and values. Like for me, it was like because again, as I said, teachers are very practical people. So for them, knowledge and skills is something more understandable. When for me, it was like two waves. When COVID came, suddenly teachers understood the value of attitude. So teachers were not prepared for COVID and for online teachers. It took an attitude. Either you want to do something about it, or you go with the flow. And then with the attitude, you gain knowledge and skills you need. And I think war was another way which actually really showed that values matter, and that they do translate further on, not vice versa, but they do translate further on. And yeah.
Can I add an example?
Absolutely.
Because I was following this research. It was absolutely amazing, because we started just 1 month after the war, and we wanted to understand, okay, we are always saying that a democratic school is a school which is better equipped to deal with the future. And I said, okay, now we have the opportunity to really look into that and to see if it is the truth or not. And they were giving me a lot of examples, because I was asking, okay, what is happening here and there? And they told me about the case of a school where it was a center for IDPs and for refugees, and also they were organizing humanitarian support and sending something to the front. And they were doing it very manually. They were all gathering in the schools, and the kids, they came to the rector and says, okay, You do that, but this is absolutely inefficient. Just give us some time, we put together a system, they took their computers, they put things into order, create a program, an application, and then they could know which package of food was going to which family and when. So, and that was a principle, and this is a Ukrainian school which traditionally have been extremely centralized and hierarchical, and they were working together, the kids with the teachers and the principals, and they came with the solution, and then it was more efficient. And so these kind of communities, and tons of these examples of kids really acting, and fantastic to communicate.
Yeah, how this knowledge from before, different kinds of knowledge about the values, about the attitudes, about the how to do things in different ways, right? They were translated into practice. But Ulla, knowledge is emphasized in the program of the Liberal Party a lot as an important tool for, well, making knowledge available to everyone, something that contributes to strengthening democracy. And this is obviously true for Norway, but as we see now, it's also true for Ukraine and probably true for any country. What can Norway do, in your opinion, to ensure that Ukraine gets even better equipped with knowledge as a weapon to rebuild the country and strengthen democracy now and in future?
Yeah, we view knowledge and education as a baseline for freedom. And that's really what it is. And when I listen there, what I think is very important, and what I hear is that policies work. That you have these policies for more democratic focus and values into school, that works. So that's really what we, so from our side, I think it's that we have to, of course, keep up and make sure that the support are held up throughout the years. And I think we should also always look at it as cooperation. Because I'm sure that we have a lot to learn also from Ukraine and the experience that is in Ukraine. Because it was mentioned here, I mean, this work on the values and democracy, it's one thing is to, also here, one thing is to understand the privilege that we have in the societies that we live in, but also to understand the value of it and also how fragile it can be. Because democracy, we see this is right now. It is Ukraine that is in this enormous war that is existential, and that has to be the main focus. But at the same time, we are in a new geopolitical world where democracy and freedom is threatened many places, and to see the school system and the education as a system both to enhance the feeling and the importance of democracy and freedom, but also as a defensive line for it. That I think is important, and is important politically to understand, so that it's not only that we, as you say, because you think education is important, we put more money into it and put it in there. But it's also, it has to be set into a larger value system on why we do it. And it has really to do the core that you have here with democracy and freedom and the opportunities for all.
Thank you. Very important. And just mentioning the Nansen program all the time. We keep coming back to it, right? Because these are the news everybody is waiting for all the time. The white paper on the Nansen program, the grant opportunities. Jorunn, I'm thinking about you first of all now because, well, the news has come last week that 7 big Norwegian organizations are about to get, or are getting, almost 1 billion kroner for their work in Ukraine, right? And obviously, the biggest part goes for humanitarian aid, like for immediate response. But education is also mentioned there in the list, and it was extremely promising. So I would like to ask you concerning this. Well, is it a priority that we can expect to continue in the future?
No, that's a good question. And I think, I mean, I'm reading the proposition, but he's part of writing it. So, so just to have that division of labor. But education was there all the time. So that has been mentioned in the 44.7, which is the proposition that describes the program. Education is mentioned specifically as a priority, also within the humanitarian response. And you know, the school I visited, that is part of a humanitarian response. So it's also what we, you know, the pictures we get in mind when we think of humanitarian response. So several of the key actors there, those 7, are working within the education sector, NRC being one of them, Save the Children being another. So that is an important part of the response. I think also it's, you know, when I started this job, I was looking into these numbers because, you know, you see these high numbers of funding and you see these partners and you think, but what is it all about? What are they actually doing? So when you look at, for example, Norwegian support to the World Bank, that is really sort of, I mean, you mentioned the importance now of prioritizing the military response, and that is what the Ukrainian government is doing. That means that they don't have the budget to do other things. That is really at the core of running, you know, keep the wheels running, so to say. So that is what the World Bank is doing. You go in there and you support the education sector, you support salaries to teachers, you support those types of things that the government themselves are not in a position to do right now. So that is one thing. But another thing I think the discussion also, you know, illustrates quite nicely is how sort of things are connected. So when you talk about electricity, you can't run schools and hospitals without electricity. And a lot of the Norwegian support is going to the energy sector, also because that is also a sector that is being strategically targeted in this war. So these things, the response has sort of, you can look at education by, you know, searching the word education, but you can also look at the linkages between the different types of support, different types of sectors, and how these things goes together. So I think education has been there, and I think also it will continue to be there, but it will, and you will find it in different types of arrangements within different types of partners and sectors. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. It's indeed a very complex picture, and understanding the context and seeing all the angles of this picture shows us to, well, what else can be done, right? But here, sometimes when we speak about education, we obviously try to narrow it down a little bit to soft skills, right? And try to probably go a little bit beyond humanitarian response, which is extremely important, and we cannot diminish its importance. And when we speak about trying to go beyond humanitarian response, Christina, when we look into the future, this is what I was thinking, right? Because the picture in Ukraine is just as complex as the picture of Norway's help to Ukraine. And now, well, the war is not over, but we already see certain tendencies. But we know that the situation is going to change when the war is over. And, well, everyone asks the question now, how many are going to return, right? How many are willing to return to Ukraine? And we already see these different groups of people. There are people who have been living in Ukraine the entire period of war. Some of them have been internally displaced. Some have become refugees and ended up in other countries. Someone obviously have been collaborators, part of the Russian regime, someone who were pro-Ukrainian volunteers. All these completely different groups of people will have to coexist together in Ukraine. Well, they're doing it now, but after the war is over, it's going to be even more complex. Christina, we also work with the question of controversial issues, right? So my question to you would be, how can education help in addressing these controversial issues which will arise sooner or later in the Ukrainian society, and what can be done in this regard?
This is a very complicated question. Also for me personally, because again, coming from social science, political science background, you kind of learned about World War II, you learned about Yugoslavian wars, you learned about other conflicts and how there are different shades of everything, and how question of collaboration, right? Who is a collaborator? Why people collaborate? When someone can be called collaborator, if someone is trying to survive, right, and has no other choice, is this person a collaborator? So many of these big questions, which were very theoretical for me, very interesting, very intrinsic, very complicated. And then when the war, full-scale war broke out, you suddenly feel how the actions and how the emotions, how the real life things interfere with this philosophy and and knowledge of the past experiences. So this is, for me, I think that it will take time before we will start discuss controversial issues and think about controversies and think about nuances. I think what would be more important and what is more important and now is working with cohesion and reconciliation and finding the ways and spaces for dialogue and voicing different experiences and also kind of, it's not a good, not valuing different experiences, but acknowledging the difference of our experiences, not, dismissing certain experiences in that respect. So I think we will have to be to tread these grounds very carefully. Like me, personally, I would love to put more colors, more shades in the picture, but practically thinking, I think that before we start dealing with controversies, we'll have to do some patching up first. But I think that we have to make educationalists, education professionals, teachers very equipped for that, because they are the first, they will be one of the first fronts when children come back with different backgrounds, different family histories. They will be the one who have to navigate the situations in the classrooms and the school life. Now they are the ones that have also to deal with different kind of traumas or experiences children had in the wartime, right? So definitely teachers always have been, but will become even more than teachers or the transmitters of knowledge. So this is what we will have to prepare for, and I think these are the burning questions, burning issues of the immediate future. And this also brings us back to this discussion of what is education a little bit, right? If it's a building, a school building, which is very important, and running water and electricity and renewed computers, computer classrooms and everything, because again, many stories of the schools which were occupied is that everything was destroyed, not looted, but destroyed. And that was something that was coming up in interviews, that people were not understanding why people, okay, looting, we can understand, but destroying things, we cannot understand. So how this boxes will become full of life again, and what new skills and what new things teachers will have to be ready to face and be equipped to face in a way.
Thank you, Christina. Anna, just to round up this discussion, because we're looking into the future, obviously, and the European Bergland Center seeks different kinds of cooperations with the Ukrainian civil society, just to exactly get the teachers better equipped, what Christina was speaking about, and just tackling these challenges that were mentioned during this discussion. So what are our priorities here? How do we try to navigate this landscape and build up right cooperations?
Well, I think that Christina mentioned is something essential. The situation in the future will be extremely complex, and the formal education system has a huge role to play. For instance, the first things we did, we took all our programs and incorporated elements of how to deal with trauma. Because this is exactly one of the roles of the teachers now, to be on the forefront to deal with kids and some will react with apathy, some will be more violent maybe, will have problems concentrating. So how do you then help these children and to learn at the same time? So they need to really rethink everything. So the schools have a really crucial role, but also looking into Ukraine in our 10 years of working there, we do understand the immense value of civil society. Ukraine has an extremely dynamic, vibrant civil society that, particularly since Maidan, they took over a number of services that were not provided. They organized themselves and they did it. Maybe not in the way we see in other countries where everything is more structurally organized. Here is more like a beehive. It's organically appearing and solving issues. So I think that civil society, both at the NGOs and the charities, the way they are organized, but civil society, they have a huge role to play. And I will just give you some numbers that kind of support this. I like numbers because it kind of gives you a picture. As a recent survey says that 82% of the population in Ukraine trust civil society. It's a huge level of trust. The other number that I am really fond of is the one that says that 46% of these civil society actors, they work at the local level. And this is absolutely key because at the local level, they are where things are, they are where it happened, they can envision what kind of responses you can have quick and in an effective way. So really, when we are thinking about rebuilding, please do not forget, and I wouldn't think of civil society as, in Norwegian, underleverandører. They need to be partners. They need to be partners, they need to listen to. And of course, there are issues with civil society there, as in other countries. Not everything is perfect, and in many cases, they are quite small. So they do not put any time or money to do communication of what they do, because they are actually there solving issues. So I think that, for example, we could also, the bigger organizations with more kind of experience, help them to build their capacities. They will stay there when everyone else has left the country. So investing in building their capacities and making them more professional. And sometimes, for example, I'm frightened that these many big schemes, they will be so complex for them. They will be difficult to understand and navigate. They're not used to this. They are used to do things at the moment. So we need to meet them where they are. And the other number I would like to bring is because most of them are working actually in education. When you see the whole picture, of course, there is a lot of NGOs and working to support the military and the IDPs and this kind of the troops on the front. But the third level, that like the third biggest, 30%, they're working in education. Why? Because they do understand that Ukraine needs their generations to be prepared for a democratic Europe, and then you need to be prepared for that. And then the institutions, the kindergartens, they need to be there and built so people will return. Otherwise, it will not happen. So they do understand the priorities, and I think that building alliances and bringing together schools and communities at the local level is very effective way to cope with the challenges we will have ahead. And particularly when talking these issues which are really, really difficult, dialogue, conflict resolution skills, peace building within the communities, which will be more and more divided, I guess.
And this is something Norway has been investing into during the last years through our program and through other initiatives, and this is something we're very proud of. Well, we have to round up. I know we can continue for another hour, but we have 10 minutes left just to open the floor to you, the audience. And we have Christine over here with the microphone. Please, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and introduce yourself. We have a question over here. Yes. Just say your name and where you come from also. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe it's actually more of a comment than it's a question. My name is Lisbeth. I work for Norwegian People's Aid. We implement locally led civil society humanitarian response in Ukraine, supported by Nansen. And I just wanted to pick up on the last comment you made because I find it very, very fascinating. So we have a handful of Ukrainian civil society partners. They were mostly women's rights organizations. There's one disability rights organization as well, which in the beginning of the war felt as everyone else, and as you've explained very well, compelled to do some level of humanitarian response. So they saw that many women were affected by violence, and they started offering multi-sectoral support within sexual and gender-based violence. So one of the discussions that we have internationally as humanitarian actors is, so when we partner with these more like human rights organizations, do we compromise or jeopardize in a way their energy if they start providing these services? But I just wanted to share that from the organizations I met in Ukraine and from all the really strong women that we work with there, they themselves feel that they get better advocates from having engaged in the response, because they provide statutory services that eventually the Ukrainian municipalities and government will have to take over, but they have intimate knowledge of the standards and the challenges and the way that the local communities would like these, for instance, women and girls safe spaces and shelters to be run. So in their opinion, it makes them better advocates, and I think that's a very important knowledge to take into also this debate that we're having now about reconstruction, and again distribute to the Norwegian government for really have taken that seriously, to partner with actors that were there from before, who respond because they cannot not respond to the crisis, but that will also be so crucial to reconstruction. And this is for the SDBV response, but it's similar, as we know, from education and across all sectors. So yeah, just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your example. Maybe we can collect, we also have a question from Jørn, and then Anne, and then maybe we can give the panel an opportunity to respond. First, okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Kai Asbjørn Sjølien. I'm from Redd Barna, Save the Children Norway. We've been working in Ukraine since 2014, and I've been personally traveling and working with Ukraine the past 20 years, so I have a very strong, close relationship with the country. What teachers been going through the past 4 years, and this is because we have a parliamentarian here, is something really incredible. I remember COVID, some months being home with the kids and digital learning. It was, I'm alone with 2 kids, so it was combining it with work, it was just terrible. But a month ago, a bit more than a month ago, we visited Chernivtsi and Western Ukraine and refugee centers there. I met with a teacher, a gymnastic teacher. She was living in a room with her son, 16-year-old, and 2 other women in the same small room. And every morning at 9 o'clock, she woke up and had to do gym rehearsals because she was a gym teacher. So she had the gym classes every morning at 9 o'clock for kids from the school where she was from in Mykolaiv. And this is just one example. And just imagine this son seeing his mother doing like aerobics and gym every morning. But this is what teachers all over Ukraine now has been facing for almost 4 years, following up kids, following up traumas, being the first psychosocial aid. And teachers in Ukraine are not alone. We have almost 500 million children in the world living in conflict and wars. And teachers in all of these countries are doing an amazing, amazing job. So something that we've been discussing in Save the Children is that the next Nobel Peace Prize should go to teachers in Ukraine and teachers globally, because what they are doing in war and conflict zones are so amazing. Yeah. So that's a tip for you. And very interesting what you've been talking about in terms of reunification. And Ukraine is a multi-ethnic country. You have Polish, Romanian, Tatar, Russians, you have Jewish, you have Roma, you have many ethnic groups and many ethnic also local languages and within the human rights, you also, for example, in Uzhhorod, you have a big Hungarian community. Do you see this as also a way of working to unite the country, that you also make it possible to have national languages in education as well? In Norway, we let Sami people use their local ethnic language. We don't force them to only speak Norwegian. That was something we did long time ago, and that was not right to do, and we all agree about that today. So how do you see this as also the future of the Ukrainian society? And the second question was, how can we stop bullying? There's a big problem with bullying also in Ukraine now, also because of ethnic background. If you're a Roma kid, you get discriminated in schools. If you're, and this can also be, this is something that it needs to be included into the new Ukrainian school, I think, much stronger. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So many important things the European Vargaland Center works with throughout different projects. But let's, we collect, give the floor to two more, Jørn, Anne, and then we take very short answers from the whole panel.
Yeah, my name is Jørn Holmansen. I'm a political scientist at Niebuhr Institute at Oslo Metropolitan University. A couple of years ago, I did a midterm evaluation of Schools for Democracy, yes. So I can confirm that you are doing an excellent job. But the kind of work you are doing, if we look at it as a kind of intervention to set some mechanisms in motion, then the outcome is contingent upon the context. And then my question is, to what extent, let's take the entire period you have been working on this project. Now it's war, Ukraine is under invasion, so situation is a bit specific, but would you say that the context is conducive for those mechanisms to be set in motion? I mean, the way political parties are talking, the way things are being debated in newspapers or in TV and so on. Is there somewhere for these young people to apply their democratic skills after finishing school? Thank you.
Thank you. And Anne.
Yes. Hello, my name is Ane Tusvik Bonde. I've been working for Human Rights House Foundation for many years, also supporting the establishment of the Education Human Rights House in Chernihiv, and now I'm working for Amnesty Norway. So my question is, since Anna, you mentioned the important role of civil society, how do you work with civil society in your program? And then I remember last semester we met one of the partners from the Norwegian People Aid, and she talked about the difficulties to get in values about gender equality into the school system. So if you could say something about the challenges you have faced of working with human rights in schools with the ministry in Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We have gathered now enough questions for another panel. But if our respected audience does not mind, we can just probably steal a couple of minutes from the break. And if we just go around and start with Jørn and trying to make the concluding remarks based on the comments and questions we have heard from the audience.
No, so I think I take 2 points. So one is on local civil society within Ukraine that Anna started, and also that was followed up by Lisbeth from the Norwegian People's Aid. So just for your information, basically, we were asked by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs this year to explore how we can establish some kind of a mechanism or program or initiative that can help support civil society within Ukraine. As mentioned from several of you, we know that it's a strong civil society in the country. We also know that the importance of their role, both in the current situation, but especially for the years to come. So that is something that we are working on now, and that we will hand over some recommendations to the ministry before Christmas. So, and of course, we have also appreciated input that we have received from several of you in that process. So that is my one point. The other thing is, and being here as well, but also the last months that I've been working with this, to build upon the partnerships and the collaboration that is between Norwegian partners within different sectors, civil society, academia, private sectors, and that is sort of the engagement in Norway in a broad sense. is larger than I thought. So I learned something there, and to build upon what is already there. I think that is sort of a strong force. And I was happy to hear from your presentation as well how you sort of took us through that history, and I think that is something to develop further. And I think it's important. Everybody is going to Ukraine and Gaza. But I think to have that history, it means something, both for the partnership of it, the relations, the networks, I think that is important and a strong force.
Thank you. That's so important. Ola.
Thank you. First, I'll take with me the point that we can award Nobel Peace Prize for teachers and teacher organizations or in Ukraine. I'll bring that with me. So that's one part, and I always think that the greatest problems the world is facing, I mean, it's global warming, it's loss of nature, and it's stand up for freedom and democracy, and those are very much interlinked. And you need a better education to go into and take a hold of all three. So those are very much interlinked. And I think this is, and also as you mentioned put your question as a parliamentarian, the most important I bring with me here is first of all the knowledge that policies work, and to put the education, democracy, human rights into a larger context, that this is part of the general defense and standing up on towards the attack, and also a part of that in that general cooperation that we need to build up in the years in front of us. And thirdly, the Nansen program is great. It gives that certainty, but it has to be increased and prolonged.
Thank you. And cannot agree more with the last point, at least, as being Ukrainian. Anna, your turn. Your concluding remarks.
I will say to you the issue of supporting civil society and the local civil society. For me, this is a very important point. You mentioned the decentralization reform. This is one of the greatest success in Ukraine, is the strong commitment to democracy at all levels. So, and we do understand that you need to give support to the central government this time of war, but at the same time, we cannot lose sight of the gains of democracy since 14 in Ukraine, so we need to strengthen that. And there is where civil society, working with local governments, they have a huge power, because they're working together. They also control how things are done. And so it's a control mechanism also for donors, I guess. So strengthening that part of Ukraine. So the gains of the democracy, the local democracy, we need to bring them in the rebuilding phase. So take care of both things at the same time. And the other one, you asked me about how do we work with civil societies in Ukraine and in other countries. I have to say, I just came from Greece a couple of weeks ago. It's the same. We are lucky that we have a center that is placed in Norway with no colonial past. So when we are coming to other countries, we are received in a more benevolent way. They look at us, and it's easier for us. And sometimes when you come from outside, I don't have an internal agenda, then it's our role, and we have done that in many cases, bringing people together. We just invite everyone, and we have done this in Ukraine for many, many years, invited all the actors, and they tell us, well, we don't meet that often because we are competing. So it's kind of our role is to bring actors together on the table, get there to talk. And sometimes the discussions are a bit feisty, but then over time they will find ways of niches where how to cooperate, learn from each other, learn from the things they have done well and the other one. So this is one of the things we have been doing, but this is more of the level of bigger NGOs in the country, and we will continue to do that because we have this kind of more neutral hat we can put on. We invite them. It's you who decides the discussion. We just have the possibility to invite you. The other thing we are doing, but this is more on local level, is you saw the whole school approach model we are using. So one of the key of this is we really encourage the schools to work with the homes of homeschool cooperation, to work with the local communities, with the local authorities. You know, you need to really understand how democracy works, and to work with civil society. So this is part of the whole process, and this is one of the things that they were not used to. We experience in many of the, so really historical issues and other stuff, but really start building trust and start bringing communities together. And our little drop is from the school perspective, that I think. And there are a number of issues, and the situation is not easy, and there is violence increasing, of course. Imagine a war, what people are bringing with trauma and so on. And unfortunately, we will see this increasing. So I think we need to do even more and to equip support the educators that are on the front line, seeing what's happening, to be more confident, to understand how they can deal. But and coming back to the last one is when the war started, so all of us working in Ukraine for years in Norway, we came together. So many of you, we have been meeting almost, I don't know, several times a month. And it was amazing how we understood that together we are a force. We can do much more together. So and this is something we need to continue as well. We also learn a lot from each other.
Absolutely. And we finish with the Ukrainian perspective from Christina.
I think one of the big things that keeps us going in Ukraine is this saying that, of course, war is a big challenge, it's a catastrophe, it's a horrible thing, but on the other hand, it also gives us a chance. Since everything is disrupted, everything is destroyed, you could start to build certain things anew, and maybe, we hope, in a better way. So I agree that Ukrainian society has been diverse. I'm not that sure if the ethnic differences were playing as big role as sometimes it is presented. And actually, speaking about language diversity, I think Ukraine is actually one of the very few countries in Europe where minorities, ethnic minorities, could get schooling exceptionally in their language and study Ukrainian as a foreign language. So it has started to change with the new law on education adopted in 2016, and there was a big outcry from the minorities because they were used to have the schooling in their own language, and it actually also produced really dire results. So it did produce the alienation of Hungarian-speaking minority, Romanian-speaking minority from the rest of society, because there was no chance for them to master Ukrainian language to the extent that they could enter Ukrainian universities. So the only chance for them was to enter Hungarian or Romanian universities afterwards. So the language diversity is there, and I think that also there were many, I don't know, not rumors, but I would say strange speculation that maybe Hungary or Poland would also have these ideas of requesting the lands that once were theirs. But I think it's a very political manipulation. So I really don't think that there is a lot of grounds for that. But I do believe that we do need to come together as a society, and although I don't think that the ethnical changes would be the main point of rupture after the war ends. Bullying certainly is an issue and will be an issue. What we do in our program is that, of course, teachers should be equipped, but what we were doing is we were trying to empower children, to make children mediators. I think this is also an important part which is sometimes overlooked, that not only teachers should be the ones who are responsible for identifying the issues of bullying and so on, but also school children should be more empowered to deal with that, and definitely this will be a problem which is huge, and this is a field where if we continue working in Ukrainian schools, we should pay more attention to. Applying democratic skills outside schools, I think I totally agree with Anna, and our program also worked a lot with making bridges between formal, non-formal education, and exactly coming out to local communities. And in Ukraine, it's again, a lot of steps are being made to incorporate youth and youth perspectives in the way local communities now work. So youth councils, youth workers, all of this has gained a momentum in the last years. So I think there's more and more possibilities and opportunities for kids to train democracy outside of school, because definitely if you only are the only space where you can pretend to be democratic is school, this is not working. But I do believe that there's more and more spaces where they do practice democracy, and some of the examples, for instance, the example that Anna mentioned today is also a great example of bringing these values outside of school and bringing it into community. Yes, there are many challenges with embedding certain values in schools, right? But then what I believe is what was mentioned today about the fragility of democracy. Then again, if we treat democracy as an institutional thing, it is fragile, right? So things started to disintegrate. But if we really believe in democratic culture, then we see that, okay, even if the things are destroyed, even if the things are in chaos, then something inside of us, something inside of the community keeps certain things going, right? So this is then investing in culture and investing in values is time-consuming, and not always you see the results immediately. But then in the end, you build something more than a fragile democracy, and you do build this resilience, and you do build things that will stay while the hurricane blows everything away. So this is at least something that keeps me going.
And this is probably something that other countries can also learn from Ukraine. We're a bit over time. I have to apologize for that, but thank you for being with us. And let's give a warm applause to this fantastic panel. And what also keeps most of us going is just seeing how much knowledge about Ukraine is present not only in this particular room, but in the entire Norwegian society these days. And thank you for helping us with that. Thank you so much. We can continue our day today with a little bit of mingling, and please stay with us. Stay for the next seminar about democratization in the classroom, for those who are registered, for those who would like to continue your day with us. Thank you so much.